G'day, it's me again, the Aussie Ideas man, and I'm just going to watch something I've recorded. It's mainly, but not totally, from the Aptera Owners Club discussion about the clean tech article. Now, I'm going to wing it. I'm just going to stop and start and then try to put my comments into a faster version of the cretins raving on. Of course, I won't be able to cover everything, and this will end up a fairly long video. So if you like to watch paint dry, then by all means stick with me to the end. I welcome any comments. I welcome intelligent comments, let's put it that way. And I welcome anybody wanting to show me if I've ever got anything wrong. That's important to me. Okay, so here we go.
Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. A day or two ago, this was an article that showed up on Clean Technica. Aptera, Archimode, and Solar are sliding to the abyss, and tech writers should know better. It was an article written mostly about Aptera, but kind of talking about the problems with tech writers gushing over these things. And if you can get past kind of the snarky, smug, and dismissive tone of the writing, there's a few decent points made, and I thought we would go over them.
And I'll go over them with him. First of all, this article is for tech writers. It says tech writers should know better. A little later, because I've seen it all the way through already, a little later, Steve says we've got every right as interested parties to discuss this. It's like he blames the journalist, Michael Barnard, for the things that he does. He's saying, the journalist is saying we shouldn't be doing it. But if you look at the article, the journalist isn't saying anything about the people who write Aptera videos. He's all about tech writers. I always like to stick to the fact.
All right, so before I go over this, I wanted to read to you guys one of my favorite quotes, and it comes from a speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave at the Sorbonne in 1910. Called Citizenship in the Republic, but it's more popularly known by the name The Man in the Arena for the part of the speech which is the most widely known. And it's one of my favorite quotes. And it says, "It is not the critic who counts, but not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, who does eventually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." So I think it's very easy to sit back and play armchair quarterback and criticize others, but it's hard to actually do the thing. And even if you try to do the thing and you fail, I think those people should be lauded. And anyway, that is the spirit with which I read many of these articles.
I believe Steve has the wrong spirit there, because that speech was made years ago before critics became a profession. Take a look at the entertainment world. They all have their reviewers. And of course, if something is good, it gets a good review. There's no criticism. But if something is bad, it gets criticism. One has to criticize to do their job. Now, in general, we live in an age where everything is allowed to be questioned. And so this being derogatory about critics is old-fashioned and is outdated. We should be able to criticize. Now, I'll just tell you the difference between me and the cretin. I say it's okay to criticize this day and age, and I criticize. So I am consistent with what I say. The cretin says you shouldn't criticize, you're a lowlife, essentially. That's paraphrasing that paragraph that he read from. He says it's low to be a critic, and then this whole article that he's got, this whole video, is criticizing Michael Barnard, the journalist, and he does it so poorly, it's not funny. It is better to say it's okay to criticize than criticize. It's ridiculous to say a critic is a lowlife, and now I'll just criticize this guy.
So anyway, here's the article. So this is a kind of a screed about how he thinks that the current writing about Aptera and other ideas is just effusive and not very critical, which in many ways I agree with. All right, so he thinks that you should write. He believes that Aptera is going to fail for sure, and so why are you wasting time on it? That's his thing, and that's just his opinion. And to be perfectly frank, most startups do fail. 90% of startups fail.
Steve has this innate ability to disagree with somebody and instantly say, in many ways, I agree with him. Here's an example where 90% of startups fail, and he agrees with it.
By just statistics and just playing the odds, Aptera is going to fail. And then be clear about conflicts of interest. I think he's under the opinion that people who talk about Aptera and write about Aptera have some kind of deep fiscal interest in it, and that they're not talking about it. Basically, I don't think very many people who write about Aptera have a vested interest in it. Maybe some of them are investors. Like, I've always been very clear that I'm an investor, but I'm a very small time investor. The amount of money that I've invested in Aptera is inconsequential to me. I think of it more as a donation. and because I believe in the idea and I believe in wanting efficient transportation, I want to support it. So I've given them an amount that I can afford to lose, and if I lose it, it's not a big deal. And unless Aptera goes up like 10,000 fold, it's going to make zero impact on my life. If it goes up tenfold, which would be amazing, it's not really going to change my life. It's not going to. The amount of money I invested in it is not something that's going to change anything about my lifestyle or what I'm able to do.
His opinion that people who write about Aptera have a fiscal interest in it is pretty much spot on. Of all the plethora of videos that I've seen that are pro Aptera, just about all of them, I would only think 2 or 3 at best, don't. Just about all of them have this: if you want to save $30 on your deposit, use my referral code. Now, if Aptera ever make these silly trikes, all the people that buy using a referral code, they get a $1,000 discount off their Aptera. So obviously if 26 people buy and it's the cheap Aptera, this video owner is going to get one for free. This is skin in the game. This is a fiscal advantage. And even Steve himself says that he's got some skin in the game. But the really telling thing is that Steve has the biggest site and is probably making money from YouTube alone. I don't know what checks he gets from YouTube, but just on the numbers that he gets in views, it would appear that he is making money from what he writes. This is why he writes about anything and anything. And when I say writes, I mean creates the video. He will go on about anything and everything because I believe there's skin in the game. There's a fiscal advantage for him. He's also got a referral code, I'm pretty sure. So this is a case of the cretin denying what is pretty patently obviously true.
So I think most of these writers, they're not these writers that write about it are not wealthy enough to have invested enough money in Aptera that what Aptera does is going to make any difference in their life.
It's interesting that the cretin says that journalists don't make enough money to be able to invest. The minimum investment is $210. It's a bit of a kick in the teeth to say that journalists can't afford $210.
Check the histories of the founders. This is where he talks about how he thinks that Fambro and Anthony, he fails to spell Fambro's name correctly. And there's a lot of factual errors. Like he believes Aptera went bankrupt, and he believes it's the same company. Now, that's a very common misconception. That's why I made this video, A Brief History of Aptera, and he should probably go watch it so he can educate himself about the real history of Aptera.
The history of Aptera has so many conflicting accounts about it that nobody should go near Aptera in its modern form. They are inaccurate, unoriginal, and in many cases have to be untrue.
I won't go too much into it, but number one, they didn't go bankrupt, they liquidated.
Okay, he's denying going bankrupt. So I've picked a few places, videos, where people have said they went bankrupt. Now, he says that liquidating is not going bankrupt, but the reality of it is, the truth is, they went bankrupt and that's why they liquidated. They went bankrupt first. It's that simple. Now, I've gathered some people who have said they've gone bankrupt, but one of those deniers is the cretin himself, from the brief history of Aptera that he recommends we watch. How dumb is that? He says they've gone bankrupt. He says they've run out of money, which is going bankrupt. From his own mouth, he proves that he deceives people because he treats people like fools. He doesn't know that people can actually see what other people are saying, including himself.
There was the company that was formed originally in 2006, and then that company basically went bankrupt and liquidated in 2011. So then they didn't raise money, and they just ran out of cash, and they died. So the Aptera company that exists now is not the same company that existed back then. That company went bankrupt and was liquidated. Number two, they weren't the ones that drove it into the ground. Basically, Paul Wilbur made some decisions about trying to convert to a four-wheeled vehicle at the end, and they ran out of money, and they chased the ATVM loans, which they did not get, and they ran out of capital, and they went under.
I was skeptical about Aptera. Yeah, I mean, I faintly remember the original company, Aptera Motors Incorporated, was founded in 2005 and made some big promises, and then it went bankrupt in 2011.
Kind of the dark ages of Aptera because the company went into bankruptcy and liquidated.
And he's talking about how they have no relevant experience in building these things, other than Chris Anthony did build some boats for a while. But by that metric, you could go look at Neil Saki. He was the guy that started Zero Motorcycles. Before he made Zero Motorcycles, he was just doing engineering consulting. He had no experience whatsoever in manufacturing.
Checking the history of the founders doesn't guarantee anything, but it should not be eliminated. It doesn't matter whether some people have had no experience in the field that they produce in. It doesn't matter because whether they go bust or are successful is an individual matter. But there's no reason to eliminate checking the history of the people. And in the case of Aptera, the history of these two founders is very, very suspicious. They have failed. There's no two ways about it. They might have been successful growing food and they might have been successful making boats or batteries, but they have failed making this Aptera. And they've modified it a little bit, modernized it, but the inherent problem of skin cooling has never been resolved. And they are setting themselves up for failure again. They say they've learned lessons. I think they've just learned how to sell snake oil. I have a much stronger suspicion that they are that cunning that they know from the get-go, both times, that they could make millions without producing anything. It is getting stronger with all the evidence I get week after week.
All right, so provide basic data and history for the firm. And this is true, yeah. If you're going to write about it, you should give basic information, and this is true. I mean, this is factual information. The first iteration of Aptera, they ran through $30 million before they ran out of money. This time, they've raised $85 million, and they are basically probably burning the money through their expenses about as fast as they can raise it, and they need $50 million to reach production. And that's going to be a hard lift. It's going to be difficult. That is extremely hard. Now, 18 years to deliver nothing, go through bankruptcy and burn through at least $150 million of other people's money. That again is not true. He needs to kind of figure that out. They worked for a few years, then they were not working. And it's a totally different company with different leadership. Now, the leadership back then was Paul Wilbur.
The 18 years to deliver nothing is probably about as true as it is the alternative that the cretin puts up. Certainly, I understand that for some years there was nothing done at all. But on a factual basis, if you subtract 6 from 23, you've got 17 years. And I believe that it was 2005 that they came up with the idea. So there's 18 years. And so on facts alone, on the math, there's been 18 years and nothing delivered. If you add the fact that it will be 2024 and they will probably have not delivered anything as well, you could almost call it 19 years. Now, I don't mind if you take out from 2011 to 2019 and take 8 years off 19 and you've got 11 years. 11 years to deliver nothing and go through bankruptcy once and burn through not 115 million but upward of 150 million is a pretty clear track record.
And Steve Fambro and Chris Anthony were not leading the company back then, and there were decisions made about moving away from the three-wheel vehicle and the original vision of the company, and they ran out of money. They did not go bankrupt. They liquidated, which means they paid back some of the creditors, and all the money of the depositors of the pre-orders were returned to them. I was one of those, and I got my deposit back.
Regarding providing basic data and history for the firms, Steve is agreeing with them, but the problem is he doesn't provide reliable, accurate, true history of the firm. He deceives people with falsehoods. For instance, that $30 million that they had raised, I found an article where Steve Fambro himself said that he raised $40 million. And much of the other details surrounding the demise of the two CEOs are completely contradictory to each other, depending on which source you get.
Assess the history of the product. This is where he goes on a screed about how three-wheeled vehicles are dumb and those never succeed. But I mean, that's not true. Like probably one of the most successful three-wheeled vehicles in the world are three-wheeled vehicles. Like if you've gone anywhere in the world that's not a first world country, these tuk-tuks are everywhere. You go to Honduras. I've been to Honduras. I've been to Indonesia. I've been to several other Asian countries in Latin America. They're all over the place. They're very successful.
I would not be recommending a tuk-tuk as an example of a successful three-wheeler. Take a look at the two guys in the front and they are sweating and crammed in there and probably got ringing in their ears from the horrible noise it produces. They're probably choking on the fumes as well because they were extremely noxious two-strokes, I believe. Now, why turn around and say that a three-wheeled vehicle is successful? Take a look at a tuk-tuk. The Aptera is supposed to be doing 101 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 it was 3.5 seconds. It's been extended to 4 seconds. But in either case, these two vehicles are chalk and cheese. And just because a tuk-tuk doesn't roll over, it can't roll over if you look at the picture. They're too jammed together. But in either case, it's a nonsense. This comparing tuk-tuks and saying, there you go, three-wheelers are successful, is just plain stupid.
Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with three-wheel vehicles. They're very stable. People just aren't used to them, and they're not going to be successful until they are. And so it's a new thing. And obviously, guy doesn't like new things. That's fine.
I'll also add that three-wheeled vehicles are suspended. They're not fixed. And what I mean is the legs on a stool are fixed. So 3 legs on a stool are stable on uneven ground. 4 legs on a chair, they're also fixed, and they wobble on uneven ground. That's plain and simple to understand. But when you have moving vehicles that are suspended, it's a different kettle of fish. And 3 wheels suspended and moving are inherently much more unstable and more unsafe than a 4-wheel suspended moving vehicle. It's chalk and cheese. I've heard Fambro and Anthony talk about the merits of stools over chairs and fool the gullible into thinking that a three-wheeler silly trike is more stable than a four-wheeled car. They deceive people. It's nonsense. I don't believe how thick the people are who swallow their gut.
Assess the capital requirements for the product. Now, this is true. Now, this is where he kind of contradicts himself, talking about how much money they ran through here, 85 million, and then he says, oh, they haven't used up enough money.
I've heard the cretin say that this journalist has contradicted himself 4 times over. This Aptera Owners Club clown contradicts himself way more often than 4 times. The strange thing about Aptera Owners Club is that you'll just get, I'm guessing, all the time. I'm guessing this, I'm guessing that. Well, at least the person who contradicts himself has said something definitive twice. He hasn't been able to say anything definitive, and everything's a guess. You don't contradict yourself when you guess.
And he's thinking that they're going to need more money, and that is true. Electromechanical Solo and Archimoto did not go through billions of dollars or even hundreds of millions of dollars to make it to production. So Aptera has definitely a different road for that. So it's not like they need a lot more money, like in the billions, but they're going to need 50 million at a minimum, and maybe closer to more than that. So this is probably Aptera's greatest hurdle. It's not a technical hurdle. It's not a product category hurdle. I think there's plenty of interest. People are willing to buy a three-wheeled car that's very efficient. There's plenty of interest. It's like, can they get the capital in this market where capital is very tight, the economy is not doing well, investors are very leery, and EV stocks have done very, very poorly. And as we know, Solo, Archimoto, they're having problems. And so it's going to be very difficult to find this funding.
Steve's now saying that the conditions today are poor for raising the capital. Well, if you look at some of the interviews that Fambro and Anthony have, they will tell you that the conditions now are far better than they were in 2009 to 2011. They say the conditions are far better for getting this silly trike off the ground and into production. They have even said that the COVID has been a bit of a blessing to them. Do your research. Watch all the videos, and you will notice that what Steve is saying here is contradictory to what the CEOs have been saying about these modern times in relation to the first time Aptera tried to get into production.
And it's something that really defines us and helps us launch the brand and tells the whole world what we're about. We are finishing up the last little bit of engineering that needs to be done to make the vehicle transition from R&D to final testing and DVT into manufacturing. We're putting our manufacturing in place. We're moving into a larger building in the next couple of weeks. All systems are go to begin manufacturing vehicles at the end of this year. We're starting out in Southern California, yes, and in several weeks or maybe a month thereafter, we'll roll out in Northern California, Menlo Park, Bay Area. We've got enough business right now in California alone to keep us very busy, but we're working very hard to determine which markets best suit us next to expand into outside of California.
And then he goes on about how solar panels are dumb on the thing. And now, he has a point there. Like back when Elon Musk was asked about solar panels, he said that the least efficient place to put solar is on a car. If you compare solar panels on a car to solar panels on a roof on a roof is definitely going to outperform solar panels on a car. However,
his argument against solar panels being dumb is once again to agree with him. He goes on, I can't cover it because he's too lengthy, but he goes on to say that it would probably have been better off not spending the money on developing solar on the silly trike. I don't know how many times he disagrees with somebody simply by agreeing with them, but it's pretty unusual.
Solar panels on a car are really convenient.
While it's not efficient and even dumb, it's convenient. Well, what's the good of being convenient if it's not efficient?
And in fact, Elon Musk has changed his mind, and he is adding solar to the Cybertruck. That is going to be an option.
And then he ends up saying, because Elon Musk has changed his mind, that it's not dumb.
Everything else in here is kind of like a very smug and snarky, dismissive screed about something that he just doesn't seem to like for whatever reason. And then his history of the founders is just wrong. I mean, he misspells their name and also does not understand the history of the companies and doesn't know exactly what happened. You should go watch my video, Brief History of Aptera. There you go. Help yourself out and educate yourself.
Watch my video. Help yourself out and educate yourself. What a load of hogwash.
Okay, well, tell me what you guys think of this article. I'm sure a lot of you guys read it. And let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Thanks to our supporting members. Have a great day.
Well, I've just told you what I think about your article. You're the hypocrite. You're the one that deceives. You're the one that's telling lies in many places, even though you don't think you do. And you've taken this to heart, even though you're just a fanboy with a site. And the article was not for you. Your comprehension skills leave a lot to be desired.
What happened there? Did funding run out? What was the problem?